In the previous two videos, I made a point to talk about the ways in which Dokkan power creeps characters, and then I wanted to show a team that wasn't exactly optimal, but had a lot of the newer characters, some easy A's, some now 3, 4, 5, 6 month old characters, take them through the hardest event here on Global and JP as we get ready to approach the 10-year anniversary, which will no doubt in the next month or so bring us the new hardest fight in the game. The reason I thought this was kind of important is because I wanted to talk about this facet that I only barely touched on in the actual showcase itself, which is Dokkan has a sort of unofficial early, mid, and late game. You can think of it like a MOBA. You can think of it like a fighting game. If you play fighting games, think of it like this. In the early game, quote unquote, that's round start. No one has any materials. Your characters are what they are, and you're both in the neutral. As we get into the mid game, we start seeing people get, one side has landed a hit, maybe they've gotten some meter, and they're applying their pressure. In the late game, that's where we're cashing out. That's Okazeme. That's all these terms that you might not be familiar with if you're not a fighting game player, but just follow the analogy for a second. The reason I think Dokkan has this is, very specifically, I brought this character who does not share many links with the team, right? You can actually go to usable links here, and this is usable, or this is useful if you don't want to use other tools like Dokkan Tool or any of the other linking sites that help you kind of track the links of your team. So you go here, and you notice that Kid Buu doesn't really share many links with characters. He really just has a Fierce Battle link, which everyone on the team has, right? The reason this is important is because, well, you're thinking, well, Kid Buu isn't running at full effectiveness. But it doesn't matter. Some characters, you need to understand, are only there to do their job in the short. And what do I mean by that? Let's switch over and talk about that. So here we are. In short, let's consider Golden Frieza and Ultimate Gohan if you're new or returning as the early game for this analogy. Kid Buu, who is a character with high defensive ability, only needs to appear for his defensive ability. I am never planning for him to be the thing that closes out Goku and Frieza, and the reason I'm sort of framing it like this is because some people think, well, why bring him? I could just bring blah 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 blah. I could bring anyone else. Well, this is a gacha. If you didn't pull anyone else, you're gonna have to make do. So this is where the quote-unquote team building comes in. Team building for Dokkan, team building for gacha in general, has nothing to do with complete full boxes. And I know that might sound strange, but the thing is that gacha become pretty samey if you always go optimal. And it's like, no duh, but there's a difference between the average user experience and the whale experience, which is very rarefied air. Most people won't play in this box. 99.9% of the player base are not whales like Truth or whoever else, people who use private servers, right? So we sort of have to approach the game as it was intended, which is that you don't have everything. It just is what it is. Because of that, we start looking at actual team building, you know, that word people throw around, as a malleable thing. If the early game is Golden Frieza and Gohan, Android 17, and then a type advantage Golden Frieza and Android 17, then if I have that character list of strong, capable damage dealers, why does Kid Buu need links? He already tanks these 3 phases. He floats off, you know, in the most hopeful sense, he floats off before we get to Goku and Frieza. And that's where we come into the decision-making portion of both team building and the actual fight itself. We play to the fight. I say many times that Golden Frieza and Ultimate Gohan is a free phase. You basically can't die to this phase. It's way too weak by modern standards. You could argue that this phase is kind of weak by previous standards, right? But what it does is it tries to sap your turn limit, your turn count. Characters like Gotenks, TEQ Broly, whoever else, really, they don't want to see phases like Golden Frieza and Ultimate Gohan because they don't want to waste precious turns on fodder. If in a perfect world, they'd show up at Goku and Frieza at full power, right? But it's impossible. So we sort of understand that we can play around these 3 phases by picking accordingly. Characters like Kid Buu who don't need to be the stars because they are slot 1s. And that's why we have these conversations about units that seem so obvious, right? I hate to harp on this point over and over, but as we go back to Beerus, moreover TEQ Beerus, if you saw that run from yesterday and you saw Kid Buu do what he needed to do and then win the fight, then how can you downplay TEQ Beerus, who does the exact same thing? If you like the Kid Buu EZA, but you for some reason need to compare TEQ Beerus to like actually Beast Gohan and say, well, he doesn't do enough damage so he can't be good as a Super EZA, don't you understand the hypocrisy that is inherent in that? That's what I'm talking about when I say that these phases are sort of like the early, mid, and late game of a MOBA or a fighting game, where you can start to think about them as not just the fight in totality, because people often talk about the fight in a specific vacuum, which is for some reason they don't look at this or is this, they just look at these two phases. But these two phases are such a small piece of this fight, because this character has come to this Android 17 with his 1.6 million. It might not seem like a lot, but he has come to make me really, really dislike certain characters, namely characters like Super Saiyan 2 Vegeta. Because if this character gets locked, he's dead. And hey, maybe that's skill difference, you know, maybe I'm a big stupid idiot, and that's also fine, you know. That's you know, I'll take that. But when you start to look at characters like, for example, TEQ Broly, and then let's take EZA TEQ Broly as well. When you start to look at these two characters, you start to see that characters like this TEQ Broly as like late game. You know what I'm saying? Does this make sense? I hope this is making sense. You know, comment if I'm bugging or not. I consider this a late game character. The reason why is because this form is essentially worthless. I never want this form out. What we're looking to do is place this character, his transform. Well, there goes that. Anything? Can I? All right. Apparently the service doesn't want to work, but we're trying to place this Broly in front of the actual boss. This Broly wants to fight Goku and Frieza, right? This Broly, however, is just solid throughout. The difference is maybe he scales down towards the late game, towards the Goku and Frieza, right? We start getting to, you know, let me just see if I can get back. We start getting towards this. We're maybe on turn 6, 7, and we know that this Broly's transformation doesn't really want to go that late, right? He kind of wants to float out of position 1 once he gets to that point after his first few turns of being dominant. But in totality, he's very strong because he's also on a team that covers his problems, namely this character with a revive, with a domain. This is a great... I would say that the weakest point for this character is something like a going into his mid game right before he gets the revive up, right? And then I think once he has revive, once it's just sitting there, revive characters are great all around, but namely late game characters. And why do I say that? It's because we hold a lot of value on characters like, where is he? Where's the man? Right here. Is this gonna break? Okay, it's not. We hold a lot of value on characters like this. This character, I would say, is a pretty good all-arounder. He kind of just floats around, but the thing he is strongest at is that he has this revive that is extremely powerful, and he has this active skill which can just end a fight. But look how late it comes up. An amazing late game character who doesn't really need to stick to a slot. He doesn't have to fulfill conditions. He doesn't have to stay on rotation. He essentially is who he is, and if he gets sniped in slot 3, who cares? He'll just come back with his active skill, like ready to go. A great, great, great late game character. I hope this is coherent. You know, the more I say it, the more I'm like, oh, is this like a little too, is this a little too fucking space age? Is this a little too weird of a comparison? But it's hopefully just getting you in the mindset of how to get through these fights with the characters you have, rather than looking at showcases and being like, oh, my characters aren't all rainbowed. But it's like, well, why do they have to be, right? Your characters don't need to be all rainbowed because you have some of the tools. We have characters like Bootanks. We have characters like, you know, Kid Buu here. Because remember, he had one link on that team. One link. But what did he accomplish? 3 phases of safety and then floated off. 3 phases. That is more than... What is that in totality? It's like 75% of the fight, right? 75% of the fight, he's the strongest thing in the game. Didn't take any damage. If he did take damage, it was probably just enough to get Super Saiyan 3 Goku out. That is the crux of Dokkan Battle, where knowledge is the battle. There's no technical skill. You're not doing crazy inputs. You're not doing this and that and this and that. You're just trying to get these characters down in as clean a way as possible so you don't have to deal with the boss, you know, ramping up and then one-shotting you. So if I can get through here, then my character did his job. I don't care what else he does. I don't care if Kid Buu didn't do 50 million attack stats. I don't care if TEQ Beerus doesn't do 50 million attack stats. Who gives a shit? The rest of my team came in and cleaned it up. And because we're not on the private server, because we're not a whale, what else does he need to do? You know? That's kind of the dishonest thing about Dokkan Battle's community, is they argue nuance when it suits them, but then they close their ears and shut their eyes when it doesn't. TEQ Beerus can't be good because because you know they don't like TEQ Beerus. But like, you know, people are freaking out over how good Kid Buu is. I don't know. Seems good to me. Team Protector active. I hate to, you know, harp on this point, but this is the mindset you want to approach this game with. Don't worry too much about, is this character doing 50 million attack stats in a vacuum and killing everybody and doing all of it? It doesn't matter, man. He had one link. One. The team brought it in around him, and you can't say he didn't do anything because the other characters could have went in slot 1 and died. That's Dokkan Battle. Dokkan Battle is... gacha games in general are not... I have every single thing as a whale, and I have perfect information. They're using the answers you have and creating solutions. This is not a fighting game. This is not a MOBA. You don't have just access to everything. You know, if a character fulfills its role, its space on your team, then there's literally no reason to undersell their ability just because, like, you might happen to, you know, hate that they're calling them Mini Beast Gohan or something. That's gonna do it for today. If you liked the video, subscribe to join the club. We all gonna make it. Peace.